Hi, my name is Rhett Neal, and I've just wrote my first book. It's called Memories of a Dancing Queen. It's about my life during the 80s and 90s living in San Francisco. When I was 23, I was living in Orange County, and I already had two boyfriends in high school, so I was already pretty much living out and loud in Orange County. I didn't want to live in a closet. So at the age of 23, I decided to move to San Francisco in 1983 and start living my life as an openly gay man. This book is the story of me living in San Francisco during the 80s and 90s, all the bars I went to. I talk about all the bars that were around, my nights in the park, everything that we did as gay men in the 80s and 90s. That's what the book's about. All right, I'm going to read a chapter in here, chapter 6, called Twin Peaks. And please excuse any mistakes I make. This is my first book, like I said, and my first time reading. Chapter 6, Twin Peaks. My first week at Dean Witter went very well. I was enjoying the whole Monday through Friday routine, and my coworkers and I had a lot of fun on breaks and lunches. John David was on his way to Europe for 3 weeks. I was heading back to Jose's to pick up a bag, then head over and begin my apartment sitting in Twin Peaks. I spent my first Friday night cooking dinner for myself and opening a bottle of wine I purchased on the way over in the Castro. I did not have a taste for wine yet, but felt the apartment commanded that I not show up without one. After dinner, with my glass of wine in hand, I stood in the living room window to admire the view. I found in his record collection that he liked Burt Bacharach. I decided to play the album. It was the perfect setting. Now all I needed was to enjoy the experience for the next 3 weeks. I went to work that weekend at Tops and Trousers and was excited to see John. I had not seen him that whole week. We hugged, and he asked me how was my first night up on the mountain. I told him about my sophisticated night with a bottle of wine and Baccarat. I also invited him and his slutty boyfriend over for dinner that evening and suggested Badlands after. He said great. He asked if he could bring anything, and I suggested wine. He laughed and said he'd bring over some beer. They came around 8 p.m., beer in hand. I gave them a tour of the place. It was very nice, but it lacked any type of personality. No artwork on the walls, just a few prints and photos, along with letters and certificates from the Mormon church. One said he was an elder. John got worried a bit. He said that and told me I should be careful with this man. I just shrugged it off. I can handle myself, I told him. After a spaghetti dinner and beer, we headed over to Badlands. On the walk down, John said the famous singer Sylvester lived on this block. We saw a house that had 3 beautiful kimonos hanging high up on the wall and decided that's where he lived. I told them that the weekend John hired me, I went to the I-beam and turned around on the dance floor. And there he was. Sylvester watched me dance and said to me, well, all right, dance, baby. And we danced a few dances together until I started to cry from happiness and got off the dance floor embarrassed but crazy happy. It was a dream come true. Badlands didn't disappoint. It was packed with men. The music was fantastic as usual. It was always that good. We grabbed some beer and found our nook. John and his slut were starting to get a bit handsy with each other, so I decided to head back to the bar. I stood next to an older guy with a leather vest and a full beard. He was around my height and a bit stocky. I was next in line for a drink when he turned around and said, "Can I get you something, chulo?" I knew that meant cute boy in Spanish and said, "I'll take a beer." He distracted me a bit because his green eyes were so green. We had small talk and I told him I just got to the city a few months ago. He then asked me if I would like a ride on his Harley. You really haven't seen the city unless you've seen it at night in the back of a motorcycle. I told him I'd meet him out front after I said goodbye to my friends. His name was Sebastian. He was a mailman in his late 40s with a black and grayish beard. He drove me that night all over the city. It was so much fun. And he was right about seeing the city on the back of a motorcycle. We ended up on the top of Twin Peaks, which was one of the most amazing views of the city. I told him I was house sitting not far away and would like him to spend the night with me. He said yes, and we headed back down the hill. When we got to my place, he told me he could stop by Sunday night instead. He informed me that we were on the bike for a few hours and that he was a bit tired. I did not realize it was that long of a ride. I said tomorrow would be great, and he drove off into the night. Sebastian came over the next evening, and brought Thai food. We ate, talked, and drank a few beers. He was easy to talk with, and I was looking forward to making out with him. I wondered if I would notice the beard. I had yet to make out with a man sporting a beard. This was going to be a first. We were sitting on the couch when he reached over to kiss me. I didn't even notice the beard. We took it to the bedroom. It was all so romantic. It had been a while since I had any romance. I wasn't looking for, nor did I want it, but it was nice. Nicer was the fact that it turned out to be the best sex of my young life. He made love for me for hours, several times that night. He was unbelievable. The next morning was more of the same. I thought I would never fuck a person my age again. He was my Friday and Saturday night date for the next 2 weeks. I broke it off with him when I headed back to Jose's. He was getting too serious and I wasn't there. He also was a talker, and that gets old real quick. An old high school friend of mine also came up for a visit for a few days, and we had lots of fun. She was my old high school dance partner and one of the best friends growing up. Her mom also let me stay with them during hard times and treated me like I was one of her own. I still keep in touch to this day. She's cool with the whole gay thing, but she's also sad that I won't be joining her in heaven. I hope to surprise her. John David was getting ready to come back, and I knew that I did not want to be there when he did. He tried to get me into bed several times before he left, and I managed to get my ass out of his apartment untouched the week after I got hired. I arrived later and back at the studio that evening. Jose told me John David had arrived home and was surprised that you weren't there. He asked you to call him when you got in. I knew he wasn't going to be happy, but I wasn't going to have sex with him ever again. I did not call John David that night when he arrived back home. I showed up for work at Dean Witter the next day, and there was an envelope addressed to me when I got to my work desk. John David asked me to meet him at his house that evening at 7:30 p.m. and not to be late. That was all he said. Shit, this was not going to be good. I felt that he had been thinking I was going to be his lover when he returned. I gave him no reason to even assume that. In fact, I tried my best to put him off. Oh well, I thought, I'll just go back to being full-time at Tops and Trousers. He came into the data entry that afternoon to talk to Peggy. She was my direct manager for the data entry department, and she was a super sweet and beautiful woman. She also gave John David rides to and from work sometimes. She had mentioned to me that she also knew I house sit for him the past 3 weeks. John David did not even look at me when he walked into the department. I'm at the front door, the first person you see. It was worse than I thought. I showed up at his apartment at 7:30 that evening. He opened the door and said, "Come in." He was very cold. He began to ask me questions about the past 3 weeks and what I had done in his apartment. I told him most of the time I was alone and only had my boss over from tops and trousers. He told me I was lying and that a neighbor noticed the man on a motorcycle coming over on the weekends. I told him yes, I did meet a guy, but it was no big deal. He complained that the house was a mess and that I wasn't leaving the apartment that night unless I cleaned it. I told him I did clean it. He didn't even leave me money for house sitting. He began to tell me that I used him to get a job. I countered with, "You used me to get free house sitting." John David then said, "I can have you fired." Again, I countered with, "I can tell human resources how you tricked me into a job, and I can also tell the guy who interviewed me that you're sexually blackmailing me to be your boyfriend." That's what this is really all about. He told me to get out, and I did. I got back to Jose's and told him what happened. "Are you going to quit your job?" Jose asked me. I didn't know. I had to be smart about this. I was making really good money, and I knew I wouldn't make that anywhere else. All I knew was I was going to show up to work with a plan the next day. I needed the night to think. The next morning I showed up to work as usual. The day went smoothly and nothing happened. Jose asked me how the day went, and I said fine. I was the one needed to fix this before things got out of hand. I grabbed a bunch of cleaning supplies and put them in a bucket with some scrub brushes. I picked up a mop at the hardware store at Cliffs in the Castro. I headed over to John David's apartment with a bottle of wine and chocolates. I decided to apologize and clean his house. I knocked on the door and he opened it. "May I come in? I'd like to apologize," I said. There I was, with a bucket in one hand and a bottle of wine and chocolates in full view, holding a mop as well. How can I refuse that?" he said with a smile and let me in. I began to tell him how sorry I was for the way I spoke to him. I told him how much I appreciated everything he had done for me. I then said, "I'm Mexican and I have a bad temper. I easily get angry and go off. I would be happy to clean your place to your standards." It worked like a charm. But he had more items I would have to do to keep my job. And if I wasn't going to sleep with him anymore, I had to agree to certain things moving forward. He then said I had to agree to 3 things. Number 1, whenever he got sick, I would have to take care of his needs, go to the store for groceries or to pick up prescriptions, etc. Number 2, on his birthdays, I would have to get him a small gift and leave it on his desk in his office. Number 3, never discuss this arrangement with anyone else or how we met. I agreed to these strange requests and proceeded to clean his house. He drank the wine, ate the chocolates, and sat there and watched me clean the entire apartment without offering me a glass of wine. He got sick a few months later and called me at work to let me know I had to pick up his prescription for him and get him some groceries from the store. I was to pay for them myself. He also asked me to write a check to pay for the electric bill the month I house sit. He said I used too much electricity and he wasn't going to pay for it. Thank the gods I paid him with a check made out to John David on the memo line I wrote for John David's electric bill and his account number. I asked him if I could see the bill and I kept it along with the return check. I knew it would come in handy one day, so I kept it safe. On his birthday a few months later, I also bought him a lizard skin wallet for his birthday, as requested, and left it on his desk. I saw a few other gifts from some of the cute boys in the office. I wondered if there were others like me in the same position. I always knew when John David was angry with me, he would have me work in the mailroom for the week, and it seemed that Paul, the manager, kind of knew why I was there, without saying a word. Paul also eventually asked me out, and I told him everything. He was sympathetic, but he said he couldn't help, but I always would tell John David I helped him out a lot in the mailroom, when all I did when I was there was sit and hang out in Paul's office talking shit. That's the end of chapter 6. Hope I did okay. And my book, like I said, is available on Amazon and bookshop.org at your favorite independent bookstore. You can order it. Thanks for listening, and I hope it was okay. Bye for now. Oh, one more thing. I love this group. This group has shown me so many wonderful gay books to read. Gay Men Love Gay Books is a wonderful platform, and I love it dearly. And thank you for all the wonderful comments and suggested books. And I love this group. Bye.